This video is brought to you by NewsVoice. The news is broken. Almost all US media is owned by just a handful of big corporations. Fake news is obviously a huge problem as well, and finding something unbiased can be hard. NewsVoice is revolutionizing the news landscape. It's an app that gives you a personalized newsfeed by aggregating major news sites, as well as international and independent media, giving some much needed balance. Each news story shows multiple sources, which are all tagged with their bias and perspective. The news affects almost everything in our lives. What we hear and read shapes which persons we trust, what we eat, what we buy, and how we vote, even how we think. NewsVoice is created by its readers as you can upvote stories that you find interesting, so more people will see them. It's essentially a democratized platform for news. Plus, it saves you time. You get all the news and all the sources in one app, so that you can be better informed. Oh, and it's totally free. Anyway, get started with NewsVoice today for free through the link below. It's available on both Google Play and the App Store. And let's get into the video. Masks. Something as simple as masks have managed to put the governments of half the world up against the ropes. To the extent that some countries, contrary to all common sense, the most basic medical recommendations, and to the experience of the most prepared countries, have come up with all kinds of reasons their citizens should not use masks in the face of a virus that is essentially transmitted by droplets traveling through airways.
No es necesario que la población utilice mascarillas. El uso de las mascarillas sí que puede ser interesante en los pacientes con sintomatología, y eso las autoridades sanitarias lo indicarán, pero no tiene ningún sentido que la población ahora mismo esté preocupada por si tiene o no tiene mascarillas en casa. Ninguno. Por lo tanto, es importante que la población no asuma mecanismos de protección que pueden no tener sentido.
And what was the reason for all of this? Well, basically, because the supply of masks was scarce. In this way, something as simple and easy to manufacture as a mask suddenly became such a precious asset due to the coronavirus pandemic, and as a result, very scarce.
Lacking beds, masks, and doctors, Europe's health services struggle to cope with the coronavirus. Shortage of personal protective equipment endangering health workers worldwide. Industry warns over face mask shortage for public.
You see, the problem was experienced to varying degrees around the world, but it was all the same problem. The coronavirus pandemic has triggered global demand for masks for both health workers and the general population. Masks are an essential tool for containing SARS coronavirus too. However, supply and production chains have not been able to adapt quickly and produce enough masks to meet the global demand. I think you all know the rest of the story. Difficulties getting masks, especially if we're talking about the most effective models. Exorbitant prices, fakes absolutely everywhere, and single-use masks that have nevertheless been used again and again and again. The exact same thing happened with many other pieces of medical equipment and instruments. As incredible as it may seem, it's in precisely this environment that some countries have seen an opportunity to seize on this shortage, and as a matter of diplomacy, and to extend their political tentacles. Masks have become the icon of the latest weapon of so-called soft power. Do you want to know more about all of this? Which country do you think is leading this curious campaign? Well, take a look at this.
Here you go. Thank me later.
It is what it is. Here you go, remember to thank me. This seems to be the slogan of some of the diplomatic campaigns that have been launched in the wake of the coronavirus. Campaigns which, on face value, seem to consist of offering free health materials, but which, in the background, have little to do with solidarity and much more with political and propaganda interests. And I don't think anyone's going to be surprised when we say that China has become the king of this already well-known mask diplomacy.
Chinese officials and their propaganda machinery are in high gear worldwide, trying to paint the Chinese government as the solution to the problem, rather than one of the sources of it. Sophie Richardson, China director at Human Rights Watch.
But why does Richardson refer to China as one of the origins of the problem? Why do you say the Chinese government is using its propaganda machine to make itself be seen as the solution to the problem? Well, the first question can be answered by watching this video that will link for you above, in which we outline why China has a good deal of responsibility for the magnitude of what has happened. And the second question is the one that we will answer in this video. Take a look at these images. Such fanfare to send humanitarian aid to countries that are having a hard time does not seem a priority. Something so common, does it? After all, when countries send aid to others who have suffered events such as an earthquake, hurricane, or similar disasters, we never see so many officials in such images. And that leads us to ask ourselves, is this really about humanitarian aid, or is it about something else? Well, friends, experts, and political analysts from all over the world agree on one thing: China never gives something for nothing.
China asserts claim to global leadership mask by mask. Beijing is providing equipment to hard-hit nations such as Italy, drawing a contrast with the US and making sure everyone knows about it. China thought it was coming out on top from the crisis by sending planes with face masks and medical equipment. Beijing thought it could reap the benefits from being the only power with the capability for this. Pierre Hasky, French journalist and former Beijing correspondent.
But why has China been working so hard to donate these kinds of materials to half the world? Well, for one fundamental reason. The Chinese government is well aware that it has gained a reputation as the country which collapsed due to the pandemic, not to mention being the geographical origin of the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. So it's understandable that it's doing its best to repair its reputation and clear Xi Jinping's government of any responsibility, which is no easy task. And all of this has caused global criticism of the Chinese government to multiply at a time when China already has many thorns in its side. The trade war with the United States, deployment of 5G networks, territorial claims on islands in the Pacific, the escalating technological war, the political clash in Hong Kong, and the re-election of a clearly hostile government in Taiwan. And all of this is now in addition to the Western government's criticism of the excessive offshoring of production lines that have typically been set up in China, another problem. And this caused Beijing to suddenly get to work and to look for a new geopolitical strategy. And right here is where a key question was asked. What if we can turn the situation around and become something like saviors? Can we not score some diplomatic and political points out of such a mess and therefore strengthen our influence in the world? Well, this explains precisely why China has set out to send medical equipment around the world, all backed up by a powerful communication campaign. For example, China has sent 1,140 respirators to New York and teams of doctors to Italy, Iran, the Philippines, and Serbia. In the latter case, the Serbian president even came to kiss the Chinese flag upon receiving medical supplies and displayed billboards with Xi Jinping's face and the message, "Thank you, brother Xi."
Evropska solidarnost ne postoji. Ja sam danas uputio posebno pismo, jer mnogo toga očekujemo i najveće nade polažemo u jedine koji mogu da nam pomognu. U ovoj teškoj situaciji to je Narodna Republika Kina.
In Hungary, senior government officials repeatedly devoted themselves to publicly thanking China for their help and downplaying what they have received from the European Union. Another example of Chinese bootlicking is Cambodia, where all foreigners were barred from entering to prevent coronavirus's transmission, except for Chinese travelers, despite that country being the source of the pandemic. Serbia, Hungary, and Cambodia, well, you know what? These three nations have one thing in common. Their ties to China have grown a lot in the past few years, and they are all part of the famous One Belt, One Road initiative. This is a plan of investments and alliances powered by Xi Jinping since 2013, which we have already discussed here on VisualPolitik many times. The point is that these displays of solidarity ramp up just when scandals like this appear.
China knew the coronavirus could become a pandemic in mid-January, but for 6 days claimed publicly that there was no evidence it could spread among humans.
And on top of all this, we have to add the doubts that are emerging recently about the actual origin of the virus. Doubts which can damage and tarnish the image of China even more. I think it's going to take a lot more than a few masks to fix that problem, don't you? But wait a minute, it's not only the Chinese government that wants to repair the political damage caused by this pandemic. Some of China's leading companies and entrepreneurs are also using this strategy. For example, Alibaba founder Jack Ma sent health supplies to several countries, including 500,000 coronavirus tests and 1 million masks to countries such as the United States and South Korea, which is very good. Agreed. There's no question about that. All these donations are more than welcome. But let's not fool ourselves. After such displays of solidarity, almost always accompanied by intense marketing campaigns, many interests are hidden beneath the surface. Perhaps the best example is found in Huawei, a telecommunications company that over recent months have been embroiled in lots of political scandals and enormous scrutiny across the world over doubts that the Chinese government can use its technology and equipment to carry out large-scale espionage activities. We told you about that in a recent video that I'll also link for you in the description in case you haven't seen it yet. The fact is that this telecommunications company has donated diagnostic technologies to countries such as Ecuador and the Philippines, as well as millions of masks that have been distributed among several countries in the European Union and the United States. Well, to the European Union, the United States, and also to Canada, a country that, by the way, has received a lot of shipments of medical equipment donated by Huawei, which happens to be precisely where Meng Wanzhou is located. This woman is Huawei's chief financial officer, and she has been released with electronic surveillance after months under house arrest. Currently, she's in the process of being extradited to the United States. A mere coincidence? Not at all. Don't even think that for a second. But hold on, if you think that this strategy, this mask diplomacy, is being used only by China, you are very, very wrong. There is another country that has decided to compete with China in this mask diplomacy thing, albeit with a very different motivation. Can you imagine which one? Well, listen up.
Taiwan, a golden opportunity?
Friends, if there's a country that has shown the world that no matter how close and interconnected you are with China, you can still keep the coronavirus at bay, that country has undoubtedly been Taiwan. With just under 24 million people, the island country has only had 440 infections. Yes, that's right, only 440 SARS-CoV-2 cases and only 7 deaths. Incredible at this point, but true. Taiwan was probably the first country to act as soon as it perceived that something very strange was going on in mainland China, with a virus that was initially thought to be a second outbreak of the SARS-CoV that shook Asia at the beginning of this millennium. For this reason, Taiwan was a pioneer in implementing early measures, such as controlling access roads to the country, especially flights from China. It promoted social distancing measures and respiratory hygiene guidelines, such as the massive use of masks from the outset. All these prevention methods have given them a tremendous competitive advantage in one particular industry, that of health products. Specifically, Taiwan is one of the leading countries in the world in terms of mask manufacturing, but this hasn't always been the case. Before the pandemic, only 1.8 million masks were made in Taiwan. A very high figure, but what if I tell you that they are currently manufacturing, get ready for this, 17 million masks every day? What if I also tell you that they are about to expand daily production to 19 million?
Taiwan to produce 19 million face masks daily by next month.
Look, remember here that we're talking about a country with less than 24 million people, which only proves if you want to, you can. But what's really behind this wild increase in production that's up to more than 10 times pre-pandemic production? Of course, the commercial and economic interest is one of the main reasons, but in Taiwan's case, those are probably not the most important ones. Any idea where this is going? Well, exactly. Taiwan's government has seen an opportunity to counterbalance China and use masks to increase its international influence. Something that fits very well with the new soft power strategy promoted by President Tsai Ing-wen, something which we've already talked about on VisualPolitik in another video. If you think about it for a moment, it's a brilliant idea. Taiwan has been losing international relevance and recognition for many years, if not decades, whilst communist China has been gaining significance. Moreover, Beijing's policies towards Taiwan have been of constant harassment and choking, both economically and diplomatically, and this has evidently damaged Taiwan's relations with other countries. And the question is, how can you counterattack a superpower like China? Well, by giving the world what it needs most right now: masks, medical equipment, and consulting on what to do and how to do it. For example, on this channel, we saw how the Czech Republic followed Taiwan's instructions to contain the coronavirus, all a bit political.
Taiwan to donate 100,000 masks per week to United States. Taiwan to donate 1.3 million masks to 8 EU states. Taiwan to give 7.07 million more masks to allies and others.
You see, in Taipei, they've really gone for it. And there's also another important factor with which Taiwan holds the cards: quality. Yes, of course, we're not going to be fooled. After so many scandals around the world concerning the quality of Chinese masks and the forgeries that intermediaries have brought to governments around the world, the Chinese government's intention to improve its image has backfired in some countries. And that is not a problem shared by Taiwan, a country famous for the development and manufacture of technological components such as chips and semiconductors. The thing is that President Tsai Ing-wen has played all these cards to bring Taiwan a few steps closer to the center of the international scene. So far, the strategy has achieved things like this.
US supports Taiwan joining WHO events in ministerial phone call.
And not only that, the crisis alongside the United States' already crumbling relationship with China before the coronavirus, in the wake of the trade war, has made the Trump administration the pro-Taiwan administration of recent decades. On March 26, 2020, US President Donald Trump signed Taiwan's International Allies Protection and Improvement Initiative, Taipei, a law by which Washington would actively collaborate in improving Taiwan's position in the world. Doesn't seem like a bad result, does it? China and Taiwan are leading this new mask diplomacy. Look, they're not the only ones who've tried it. Other countries such as Cuba and Russia also tried to emulate this particular diplomatic strategy, of course, with very much poorer results, but their efforts were not completely irrelevant. In the case of Cuba, despite its government's attempts, all it could really bring to the table were doctors without equipment and totally unprepared for the coronavirus. And in the case of Russia, well, let's just say that they already have a lot of trouble at home. Anyway, at this point, it's your turn. What's your experience? Do you think donations of masks by China or other countries have influenced the image of those countries in your environment? What do you think of this particular political strategy? Leave your answer in the comments. So, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. I'll see you in the next video.
And if you want to learn more about politics and hear even more of my lovely voice, you can join us at Reconsider Media. We have a podcast at reconsidermedia.com/podcast. See you there.